Is it possible to learn a language through stories? This is what Ollie Richards, the author of Teach Yourself Graded Readers in Foreign Languages, claims. His approach is really popular, and his books are bestsellers. I was intrigued when I first heard of these books. I didn't buy them straight away, but after a few years learning languages and using mostly resources online or textbooks on grammar and other language resources, I decided to try his books. Last year I bought 3 of them. I'm gonna show you. I bought Portuguese, Russian and German for beginners. Now for these languages, at least for, I'm not sure for about Portuguese, but for German and Russian there is an intermediate version as well. I found this content quite easy. Nonetheless, I found them very useful, and I'll tell you in a bit why. But now let me tell you a little bit more about the idea behind these books. These are graded readers. This is not a new concept. These books are based on controlled vocabulary and grammar. They are written, they are intended for people who are learning the language and they want to read something at a certain level that is not too difficult for them. In this case, the focus is on high frequency vocabulary and expressions, and this is a good way to learn to expand your vocabulary. I really like the layout of these books. 8 short stories divided in short chapters, but for other languages you can see it's pretty much the same format, similar stories. They are pretty much the same stories adapted for each language. In German, for example, the vocabulary is in bold, highlighted vocabulary is in bold, and you can then find at the end of each chapter at least a summary and a list of vocabulary. He also recommends that you should read once. Don't worry about the fact that you won't understand everything. Read a second time, and then there are also questions, comprehension questions at the end of each chapter. At the end of the day, this doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you read and you expand your vocabulary, you learn structures through reading. I will tell you in a bit how I use these books. This content is intended for upper beginners, lower intermediate learners, which means that if you are a perfect beginner, you shouldn't start with something like that because it would be too challenging. And anyway, it says on the cover, this is for, it states here very clearly, for high beginner to low intermediate language learners. Graded readers are a really good opportunity to expand your vocabulary and to familiarize with the most common expressions and structures used in the language. So even in my case, although I find this content too easy, they are still quite useful because they help me reinforce what I've learned. And I occasionally come across a new word anyway, so it's or a new expression. So it's not a waste of time, if you see what I mean. So what I like and what I don't like about these books. Let's start with the things I like, which are many. First of all, I really like the layout. There are 8 short stories divided in 3-4 chapters. At the end of each chapter you find a summary, list of vocabulary and comprehension questions. Therefore, it's very easy to get through the content. It's easy to use these books consistently. They have a good vocabulary selection. They use high frequency vocabulary with plenty of useful structures. So why these books are useful? Because unlike books that are intended for native readers, for native speakers, or for people who master the language, these books have a controlled vocabulary and grammar within them. They are written in a way that people who are at an intermediate level can read them and can actually enjoy the content. So graded readers are a good step before you start reading content for natives. This is comprehensible input, essentially, because you can understand 80-90% of the content and you come across the new, the unknown vocabulary or expression. But nonetheless, you can understand the sense, the meaning of the story of what you read without big problems. And this is very important. It's not a disruptive reading. You don't need to stop too frequently to look up for a word that you don't know and so on. That's at least my experience. I picked up a book in, I don't know, in German, or in Russian when I wasn't quite ready to read something for native speakers yet. And it feels overwhelming, and I'm feeling frustrated because I cannot enjoy reading. In this case, graded readers are a good intermediate step before you start reading content for natives. Now let's talk about the things I don't like about these books, which are not many. The real limitation is not the method that overall I like. It's the content, the stories themselves. Because even though these books are designed for adults and young adults, the stories often feel more like they're written for children in a way. So, you know, there are different type of stories, but there are like fantasy, fairy tale style with predictable plots. So I found that the stories, the plots, not really engaging. This is why sometimes I start reading, I lose interest and I stop. But overall, I really like the approach and everything else. The one thing I would recommend is to come up with stories that are more relevant for adult learners. Now, let me talk about how I use these books. I normally read aloud once or twice, and I focus a lot on structures, not just the meaning, on the vocabulary and everything else. I try to notice patterns, endings, and the grammar in context. Occasionally, I also read aloud and record what I read with ChatGPT. And for example, I ask ChatGPT to highlight structures and vocabulary, for example. And I would say this is a more interactive way that works quite well for me. Now let's go back to the initial question before I conclude this video. Can you learn a language through stories? My honest answer is no, because this is not a complete method, and reading alone doesn't make you fluent. And indeed, you really need to practice your active skills in order to become fluent. So you need to work a great deal on writing and speaking. This is why in other videos I've stressed the importance of writing, and in particular a certain type of writing in language learning and speaking. I'm a big fan of language exchange, but speaking with a tutor is equally good. I mean, whatever you do, it's important to practice active skills. It's important to activate your language. And I think storytelling alone doesn't do this. I want to be clear, this is not a sponsored video, this is just my genuine review. That's it for today. I hope you find this video useful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any experience with these books. Have you used any of these graded readers by Ollie Richards or any other graded readers? I'm really interested in knowing what you think, what your experience was. Thank you for watching until the end. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.